So that's going. So then since we didn't record the beginning, perhaps when we introduce ourselves, we will share our name, where we're calling from, and the two framing questions in order to initiate or catalyze the dialogue is what's most attractive to you about the gift economy, and what's your biggest apprehension about the gift economy. And then if you have any gift or story or art you'd like to share or direction you wish to go, you can also share that. And to frame the discussion, I'll start. To me, what's most attractive is the possibility of abundance, and particularly abundant relationships, and the interdependence that could emerge from a gift economy. Ooh, yay! Welcome, Ben.
Thank you. And it was set up so you could get on the call. You
Yes.
didn't have to.
Everything, and I love that we're both colorful.
Hi, Forrest and Vera and Suzanne.
Hello.
Vera, are you Dunya's aunt? Is that?
No, I'm not her aunt. I'm her mom.
You're her mom. Oh, so nice to meet you.
I'm her mom.
And we're matching. We're both in green.
You're at least the second mother and child combo participating in Now What? Yes.
Would you count yourself as the first combo?
That's the other one I know about. There might be others.
So we were just getting started, and I'll repeat for the third time, although perhaps I can paste it in the...
It's already in the conversation, Dunya, for
everyone.
But
when Ben joined, he doesn't have the history of the chat. So I'll paste it again, and sorry if it now just looks crowded for the rest of you. So framing questions, what's most attractive and what's your biggest apprehension? And I was sharing, and perhaps also what could be useful, at least in my case, is I did share a bit in the blog post, but what I understand to be the gift economy, which is perhaps in that I can tie in my replies, because what's most attractive is the possibility of these abundant relationships and interdependence between all of us, and removing the layer of abstraction that money creates. And I'm not saying that I'm against money. I think money is useful in certain contexts. But when it comes to what was most triggering to me about money was in the context of care work. And I'm not saying that there is no space to have care work, paid care work. But in my everyday interaction, so much of what gives me meaning and what I love to do is to care. And somehow it's not valued with money, and in a capitalistic world, what's not valued with money is not seen or valued the same way. So for me, how do we become more aware of that in formulating the gifts that we give and that we ask for? So removing that layer of abstraction, because money, you could use it for anything, but when you have to ask specifically for what it is you want, that's really interesting in terms of human development, because it requires a certain effort, a certain awareness of what our needs are and what our boundaries are. And so my biggest apprehension is that learning how to ask for what we want and learning how to say no when we're not able to give what we're being asked by someone is a lot of work, and it's really uncomfortable. And so what's the collective willingness to do so? And that's, I guess, my apprehension is, are we ready, or what would it take for us to face this uncomfortable relationship work? So that's my answer to start. And I don't know if I should call on someone or if someone feels called to share.
I feel called to respond to Dunya because I am pretty much in sync with everything that you just said. um, when I was younger, I didn't make a lot of money. I have a very artistic nature, and I wanted to do things that at that time didn't receive a lot of money. And so I would just um, had such a yearning to be able to share this artistic side of myself and still be able to pay my bills, you know. And one time I remember thinking very frustratedly about being up way late at night till 2 or 3 in the morning, talking with someone who really needed to talk, you know, that caring aspect, and thinking it's just not fair that now, you know, instead of prioritizing caring, I've got to stop talking and so I can get up at 6 so I can go to work in this way that's, you know, considered valuable. And so I have spent a lot of my life just doing things that I received donations for. I was fortunate to get into a relationship with a person who had a business, although it was music oriented, and I was able to do the advertising and the communications. So a lot of my talents were used there, and I did have a roof over my head, so that was nice. But my biggest apprehension is yeah, how are people going to be willing to make these changes? And I've been trying to put the gift economy into operation where I live here for about 4 years, and I have dealt with all of that. I have a friend who's still arguing with me after 3 years for me, in her mind, making her decide what to offer me rather than just give me money, which is what she has money and she just really wanted to just give me money, and she's still reminding me how hard that was for her to be in that position, you know. And I wasn't even making her. I'm like, well, give me money then, do whatever you want, you know. It's just that the option is there, you know. And it has been a struggle, and kids get it really quickly. I had no problem with that, but adults just have a lot of history and baggage around the concept of extrinsic value and value in general. And I'm working with the local currency group right now, and we're just keep going round and round and round about creating a local currency without just turning it into another form of capitalism. Yeah, you're right. There's a lot there, and so I guess that's also one of my big concerns too.
Thank you, Susan.
I'm going to jump in. So my name's Vera, and I am Dunya's mom. And it's so strange because I moved from Monaco to Nova Scotia. Well, and I passed by the States, by Miami, and in two completely opposite cultures and ways of living, really, where where I see that there is much less you know, means in Nova Scotia, and much more in Monaco. And here, people are more willing to give than in another culture. And so I'm really new to this, so bear with me. And I. Yeah, this whole thing, I was brought up in, you know, those that give feel that they have given a lot, and those that receive uh, think that they have not been given enough, you know. So I think that's my first apprehension. And with Dunya, I've been learning, you know, that she is not tied to the material. She is more tied to the personal experience and to much more connected to giving than to, you know, and let go of the receive, because it will come, you know. She thinks that there is a movement. And I was not, you know, I don't know much about that, but I've been connected here to this unconditional way of participating in the community for the better good. And usually it is the people that are more, you know, disconnected to this material side that, of greed. And there are people in the community um, that give without this, and that receive, but without the this side of you know, attachment that I think. So I don't know. It's really abstract for me, but I think that in my case, for myself, it is also always hard to ask for money in, I want to change careers and do something else. But as Suzanne was saying, how do you value um, assistance to people, or, you know, just being giving what you know how to do. In my case, I know different languages. I've done a lot of therapy, and I want to get into yes, therapy and help people. But how do you value those services, and how can the exchange uh, um, work? And it's about having a community that is willing to work together, right? So I'm just brainstorming à haute voix, comme on dit en français. So that's it for me. Those are my questions and my.
I can pop in. Thank you all. I'm Forrest, calling in from Portland, Oregon. Yeah, gift economy is interesting for me. I would have to say that this is probably the first, or one of the first, that I can recall of a conversation specifically focused on those two words combined, the gift economy. You know, because I think of a gift is often, you know, just a release, a gift, an expression in terms of gratitude and things like this. I think of economy as a recognition of an exchange of value. And so, you know, I don't know what, you know, it's kind of a juxtaposition. And so certainly have studied shareable and read that, and many other kinds of components and things that are around it. But, and so, you know, what comes to me is things like understanding reciprocity, understanding that my desire, and I believe a good model for the health of the world is to use nature as our teacher and how nature operates. And therefore, you know, that biomimicry or whatever. But when I think of nature, my background has included not only experiences in fast growth businesses that have grown basically out of intrinsic energy, internally generated, but also in terms of, you know, putting together a clinical trial and running it for a few years with no external compensation for that. And so but in each kind, I look at that there's an exchange of energy. So one of the areas is really studying microbes. And the only way you can understand microorganisms is as ecosystems. And so if we start shifting, or at least for me, shifting my perspective from understanding what's going on by understanding the individual components of what's going on to understanding the dynamics of an ecosystem, which are very different because they're now collections. That, you know, you're not paying as much attention to the individual activity of any given individual member as you are what is the collective focus group, energy, food, lack of food, whatever it is, because any ecosystem can either be in a dynamic balance, moving around, doing what it's doing, growing, thriving, seemingly in balance with its exterior components, or go in balance when another component comes in that happens to find an environment that it thrives in and totally wipes or changes dramatically in what might be considered a harmful way to the existing ecosystem. And is that harmful? Well, then that comes into what's the outcome we're trying to create. So, I mean, I don't know that how this necessarily adds in terms of this. I noticed as I was thinking here is my background of liking to work with spreadsheets and liking to measure things and kind of scientific is that, you know, feel kind of addicted to wanting to have metrics in some form of exchange thing and recognition that our human energy, that really time and attention is the most valuable commodity that exists on the planet. And so therefore there's a certain level of relaxation, but also mindfulness about using time and attention and being thoughtful of others' time and attention and how to do. So those are the things that are kind of bubbling around this topic for me.
I guess it's, do you want to go, Akiko, or shall I?
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I'm late. I'm Akiko, living in Sweden. And I am very interested in gift economy because quite a few of, or quite many of my friends talk about it here in Sweden. And we started a study circle about the gift economy in the winter time. But because of the corona, we couldn't do much, but it was like we gather and talk about what I need and what other person need, and if we can exchange or if we can just help each other, or, you know, that kind of thing. So we were really thinking about that kind of more like exchange, community exchange kind of thing. And at the same time, I have a few friends who are working freelance and trying to live with the gift economy. And one of them are making a film and show it on the online, and people can pay afterwards how much they want, and it's working well. So it's really nice. His movie is in English, so I want to promote. He is one of the active person in the transition movement here too, and it is called Campfire Stories, and he is really doing it with the gift economy. And another person is a journalist, freelance, and she also work with the gift economy. And it's not so easy, but I think it's very inspiring to see people who really do it and live with it. And I have also learned a lot this year to live with a quite a low budget. Because I usually get extra income during the summer because some people come from Japan to do some retreat here and learning something, but they couldn't come. So I really have a quite low economy this year, but it was exciting for me to figure it out how I can live with small amount of money, but still enjoying it. And I think I became very creative with cooking and also lots of things at home. So I am very interested in knowing how we can spread this idea widely, and if there is a kind of a beginner's way of doing something in the community or even in the family too. So I wanted to get the inspiration today. That's why I joined here today. Thank you. Did I say everything I should have said?
We didn't hear about your apprehensions.
Apprehensions? What's that?
It's not so sure, maybe this is just too good to be true, or what aspect of yourself feels like, or maybe there is no apprehension, and that's okay too.
Not really. I think that would be really nice for everyone. In Japan, there is a really rich person who once said that he wished there is no money in the whole world and everything is free. But still people want something, so people still, produce something and keep working, even though there is no salary or, incomes on the work, because everything is free. And when I imagined that kind of world, I thought that would be nice. Why not? So I have a big hope about this gift economy or no money way of world. So maybe this power things and hierarchy and everything will be disappear.
Thank you, Akiko.
Thank you.
I'm Ben. I'm in Newtown, Connecticut, which is a small-ish town about 70 miles from New York City. And I first learned about the concept of the gift economy as I've come to understand it from Bill Twist, who was one of the co-founders of the Pachamama Alliance. I was working with them back in 2010, 2011. And we'd gone out to dinner, and it was the weirdest thing, and like sort of without any prompting, like there was some conversation. I don't know. He just decides to launch into a 30-minute lecture on this topic, and we all just sat there and listened because he was, he's a respected thought leader, and we were all kind of working for him to some degree, which is interesting in the context of a gift economy conversation, right? So he just expanded on this, and what he said that I had not understood, that really stuck with me and made me think more about the potential of this, was that the original economic system for humanity was the gift economy. Now, I had always thought it was barter, right? If I want something, I would trade. Before we had money, we had barter, and that was the economic system. And it's like, no, that was much later, and that was more about how different groups would trade with one another. But within your community, which is where people spent 99.9%, maybe even 100% of their lives, right? Within your village, within your tribe, within your group, it was the gift economy. What did that mean? If I needed my roof rethatched, I didn't give you a goat in return for you helping me. Everybody in the village just showed up to help do the roof. And when it was time to hunt, we went out and hunted, and we came back and we shared the meat. And you still see, of course, societies living this way today. And so it was, and the more you were, able to provide to others, the more secure you were in the community, or maybe everybody was secure because there was just this sense that we had enough. So yeah, everything was free in a certain sense because of that. But people also knew not to be too greedy because they felt these bonds of connection and trust, right? And they knew they were reliant on one another. If you were thrown out of your village, you were probably going to die. So there was that, and so the idea of how, then I learned that people are experimenting with how to create spaces that embody that concept, the fields of generosity in our within the context of our modern society economy. And that just was fascinating to me. So I've done reading and studying on it and learned about people who are able to successfully operate, coaching businesses this way, or a web designer does it. Charles Eisenstein is the author I most associate with a lot of this theory, although there are others. But I've just been really interested. And now what is an effort, is a pop-up gift economy twice a year, and runs, to the extent it does, purely on those kinds of free exchanges. And we do gather money and move it around. And so far, not a lot, and also other gifts. So what I love about it, it's like when you name, who was it? Suzanne, you were talking about your client who was annoyed at you for not telling her how much to pay you, right? And I think there's something so powerful in that. That's a transformational moment when people are confronted with the idea that what they give to somebody, and they receive something as a gift, and they have an invitation to give something back, but it's not an exchange in the sense of barter or a transaction. It's relational. I have to think about what my connection is to you and how much gratitude I feel from you and what I can afford to give, and then all these questions come up of, well, what are you going to think of me if I do this or that? And all that whole framework, the fact that we don't know how to operate that way, to me encapsulates so much of what's wrong with our current economic system. That it's, you started out talking about care work, Dunya, and one of the things that what our system does is it figures out everything it can monetize and creates, ways to deliver those goods and services for money in ways that then destroy our capacity to do it outside of that system, because those things tend to dominate, and it's not that we don't still have care workers, and lots of people do it for their parents and stuff, but we've also outsourced so much of that, right? It's a constant outsourcing of what we used to do for ourselves in community that we now pay for as a service. And it includes things like entertaining ourselves, and even, music making used to not be an industry, right? It was just something we did together. And on and on. There are all these examples. So how do we reclaim some of that? How do we create spaces where that happens? And can we do it in a way that we actually thrive, that it doesn't feel like a scarce space? I mean, could $100,000 show up to support an edition of Now What, so that everybody who worked to make it happen actually got paid more than they would have received if they used their precious attention and time, to your point, Forrest, in some other way? And how much energy would flow into not just Now What, but all kinds of work to make the world, a better place, a cleaner, healthier place, to create healing. If you could just do what you wanted to do, if you could give your gifts and be supported for doing it, what would you choose to do? And most people, I think, would change what they're doing, right? I did a workshop on requests, on the power of requests. And this goes to what you were saying in the beginning, Dunya, about the sense of how we need to learn. There's a lot of learning involved in expressing what our needs are, and what what our gifts are that we have to offer. And there's vulnerability in it. It requires a certain kind of trust that we've been trained that it's too dangerous to just casually give out. And I want to question those assumptions. I want to ask, what happens if we choose to trust without the data that would, that we would normally want, without doing the due diligence and the research and having all these experiences? And yeah, we'll get burned sometimes, but how much generosity might flow that would make up for that? I'm very curious. And so I mentioned the workshop. Just wanted to complete that thought, and it'll be done. That one of what we discovered, I think one of the big learnings in that one was this question of trust and vulnerability, and how hard it is for people to really say what it is they'd like to give, even not just what they'd like to receive. And the other insight was that what people most want to receive is the ability to give what they most want to give, and be able to take the time to do it, to have the time, to have the resources, so that that's what they can do with their lives. And that to me was just such a beautiful thing to hear and realize. I didn't talk about my apprehensions today. I have some gifts to offer too. I feel like I just spoke a lot.
I love it. And I thank you, Ben. I want to open for everyone to feel free to share. One thing, when Ben shared with me how people were showing up, and one thing that everyone wanted to give was their listening, their attention. So I invite us to start with that, to listen to each other, and to just, if the desire to share comes up, to do so. So Ben, there is no too much talking unless you feel like you're done.
Yeah, don't talk past the point when you're done.
I mean, I could say something about apprehensions, and I did have some gifts to share.
Okay, Forrest, I saw you unmuted yourself.
Sure. So I mean, thank you, Ben, for bringing up the story that you did, and it kind of struck some thoughts regarding that. And going back to what I was saying about ecosystems. So ecosystems have boundaries, right? The boundaries are dynamically formed, but they're boundaries of like things that are in a synergy often. Sometimes they're parasitical, but that actually, it's only parasitical from meaning that the one organism is drawing from another organism in a more unidirectional way. And yet, when looked at a bigger picture, somehow that also ends up serving a larger ecosystem that it's part of. So it's like understanding these dynamic balances that are happening all the time. So I think about, from humans' point of view, what is that? That's kind of shared culture. And back way at the beginning, we also had shared geographic boundaries that were generated by what was available and how to live. I mean, you really didn't have a whole lot of choice. And if you were going to have a life, you had to be with a certain community for a period of time. So this is, and then, you know, the other thing that strikes is that we're at this really dynamic, fluid, bubbly, I mean, we're riding through the rapids of change, unlike anything that has ever existed on the planet, and it's not going to be over anytime soon. I mean, it's probably got another generation before it really stabilizes or more. And I actually do think it will stabilize, but right now we're moving from a world where scarcity equals value into a world where abundance is where, and managing abundance is where value is created. And all the rules are different. And trying to figure out how to do that and do it at the same time. So these are, you know, just some of the things, again, and recognizing hierarchy of needs. So I'd love to see, for instance, that water and basic food and housing, you know, the fundamentals of being able to survive in life are the things that are really kind of created within common boundaries and understandings, which then ends up becoming cultures and our value systems that we're aligned to. And now this whole digital world where all of a sudden it's not by geographics that we're being bounded by common interests. and things, and how do we put that together? So I'm mostly, I guess, still continuing to bubble with questions rather than any kind of questions and observations. I'll complete with that.
Questions are beautiful gifts, and I'm feeling called to type up notes as everyone speaks, because I was writing on my notebook and realizing I could do that in the chat. So please, you can read them afterwards or along. Oh, and if you, other thing, thank you, Akiko, is like if you also mentioned the other people or gifts, you can type them into the chat, and I'll save the chat as well and share them more widely with the community.
And when I was listening, I kind of remember, or I remember that in Japan, it's a cultural thing to give money as a gift or appreciation. If we learn something, we give a teacher some money. It's not because of, it's not brave or anything, but yeah, and just to show respect and appreciation. And also when somebody go to some journey or travel, then people usually give some money for the people to be safe and have a nice time, and you know, that kind of thing they we have in Japan, but not in Sweden, so it's a little bit different. When I moved here, it's really completely different, and I don't know which is, if it's good or bad, but traditionally in Japan, there is some kind of gift way of thinking. And maybe because of that, I've never asked for amount. I work as freelance too. I never ask something or so. And I just accept whatever they say. And I think it's fine for me. It's just I have to adjust the way I use. And especially, I really appreciate the money I get from my work. So I think about the person who give money to the things I do. It's quite a lot about the environmental issue. Then of course I want to live like that. I don't want to spend money for some completely different thing. So I think about the money. Sorry, I'm not talking about the gift, but
No, that is not. Thank you. No, sorry. This so what I was typing and what I heard from you is that growing up in a culture of abundance, you are less attached to the amount, and I think it speaks very loudly to the possibility of not having that need to count and to hold on, because you have that that abundance inside, that it will come, and that, you know, and that you
yeah,
can
it's kind of
and that
trust.
it's more,
Yeah, it's a trust between, I mean, people. I trust people.
Wow.
But it's also, I really like hearing, and what also came up is the distinction between that and those that might feel entitled. So your mindset is not one of entitlement; it is one of acceptance and connection and trust, and then adjustment personally, not looking for the outside to, you know, have any kind of victim level energy at all about what's occurred, but saying, oh, life is giving me an opportunity in a moment to become creative, and this is a challenge, and I'm figuring it out, and you know, and that's giving me new muscles almost, like, because that's what creativity and challenge does, is it stretches our muscles of a certain type. And so that comes back to, as you were talking about, culture and individual perspective. and then the dynamics between the two of those, just lovely.
Hello, Claire.
Hi, Suzanne. Morning, everyone, or afternoon, or evening.
Hello, Claire.
Hi, Claire.
Hello.
And this thing about value for value, that's our hardest thing to get over. And that's what I say about the kids. They just get it because they haven't been indoctrinated quite as thoroughly as the rest of us have. I remember the first time I had an art show and I just put everything on the wall and on the shelf as a gift. And it's funny, the larger pieces rarely go, because people just do get caught in, like this one woman came in and she said, I love this picture and I know that it is worth more than just a bushel of apples, but you know, I'm a farmer. And I'm thinking, no, I want a bushel of apples. You know, our minds were just going in different places. And then another time a family came in and two daughters. This one girl was probably about 10. And I had my sign. I just said, you know, I'm operating with the gift economy where you may have whatever you want as a gift. And if you want to give me a gift too, I'm happy to take it. And she just whipped this little notepad out of her purse and drew me a picture of a dragon and handed it over with just all this glee, you know, in exchange for this card that she wanted. It wasn't in her mind. It was, you know, well, I want this card. And then she just, yeah, here's my gift. She wasn't thinking, well, this is just a little drawing, you know, I mean, and in my little notebook. For her, it was totally from her being, you know.
I'm just reading, Dunia sent me privately the list of elements.
Yeah, so thank you, Claire. I was very split because I was trying to listen to Suzanne and at the same time feeling as a host the desire to catch you up and realizing that it was hard for me to do both, and that I feel a bit of mourning, like a sadness that I wasn't able to listen to everything you were sharing, Suzanne. But I know that all of it is recorded as well, so that's a relief, and I can let go of that. Thank you, Claire. Yeah, we started by sharing kind of what's most attractive about the gift economy, or if there were any apprehensions. But the conversation has caught up into everyone sharing. So you can do that as a way to jump in, or if you feel like you're here, yeah, it's. Actually, I would love for you to share.
Okay. Well, firstly, it's nice to join you. I was experimenting with the other community, the one that Ben, you've introduced us to, and I can't remember what it's called now.
The online facilitation unconference?
Yeah. So it's nice to be back. I'll put it that way. Yes. So I'm going to answer the question, what is most attractive to me about the gift economy personally, rather than conceptually. So personally, for me, there's this piece about learning to value, experiment with the idea of value, of things that I bring. And I guess I value having a place to bring things to. So the gift, in a way, is having a space to bring gifts to. That's the reciprocity piece, you know, where it kind of, the circle fulfills itself. Just like if I'm performing or doing sound healings, it feels so much better to be able to do that for people, with people, rather than just for the space. You know, there's something nice about that I like. The biggest apprehensions about the gift economy. So I will go a bit bigger on that one. I think, to me, any new idea, not that this is a new idea, but, you know, an idea that hasn't been adopted yet fully, is the transparency of how it self-organizes and how people can engage with it, so that perhaps there's not lots of steps of people you have to talk to first, so that it becomes very evident how I contribute to it, and if there is such a thing as how we value the various elements of giving and receiving. You know, is that something that we all have to agree on the value of something? Does it get unitized, so to speak? Yeah, so that's sort of on my mind, I suppose, around the idea of a gift economy, is just how to make it really easy to participate in that sense of things. Does that make sense?
So I can kind of echo what I'm understanding, which will have my own elements.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing is that what's most exciting for you is to have a community or a space that you can engage with and feel like you can give your gifts, and to trust that those will come back, and that it's a generative field. And that's at least what I understood by you when you shared about your sound healing and having people to offer it to. And then your apprehension, is that does that sound
yeah, I guess the question of transaction comes in,
and that's what
like, if you give
apples.
something, does it have to be transactional? What makes something feel complete within itself in the giving?
So
does something, what has to come back?
So from what I'm hearing in the conversation is that, and at least I was loving what Akiko was sharing, having grown up in Japan, where there is a culture of gifting money and feeling there is a sense of abundance, that when she even works now, she doesn't feel the need to say how much the person should pay, and that she trusts in humanity and in that field of generosity, and that when she doesn't have as much money, she sees it as an opportunity, and she relies on herself to adapt and to be creative with what she does have, and trusting in that sense. I think Forrest also had that. He was talking about his kind of a addiction to metrics and needing to know and to quantify, and so I think that this idea of surrender and trusting in having a space where you can do that, or just in the case of Akiko, just doing it. And so I feel like what I'm trying to say is that these tensions are present in the space and that have been brought up. So I'm glad that you feel them too. Yeah. And actually, when you said that you were coming from that online on conference of facilitators, another question that Forrest brought up, and which feels really interesting to me, and actually, Ben, you brought it up too, just now what, in the fact that it exists, it brings up this question of the digital space. And Forrest was sharing how the fact that we have this digital space allows for us to not only organize geographically, but have this neo-tribal thing where we self-organize by interest. But at the same time, I'm finding in my personal life that I'm still very drawn to being engaged in my physical space, and balancing being online and fully engaged online and building, and the effort it takes to build relationship. I was feeling that today when Rick was sharing earlier about his feelings around the collective, and I'm like, well, I actually don't know many people in the collective, and nurturing relationships virtually and what that takes is kind of something that's coming up, and how the gifting happens online.
Well, that was a gift for me when Rick shared his frustration Because sometimes people say something.
Because not everyone is on the chat. Rick, who also offers different offerings in Now What, was sharing his frustration on a Slack channel, on a group chat of the Now What collective, and feeling frustrated. Yes, Claire, you can pick it up from here.
Well, I think his frustration was to do with, do you want me to go into that or just my response?
Just what you were going to say.
Okay. The fact that I could read something from somebody else and then recognize myself in it, recognize my own experience in his experience, was a gift. And it's like, oh, that's right. And then suddenly just being able to witness that, both here and in another, creates the opportunity to embolden, to bolster up something that's perhaps leaning in a bit, needs a bit more attention. So there's that, to me, that's the gift of the observations we can share, is they can resonate and they can also be addressed, and that there's a natural benefit then, I think, that ripples out for everybody. That's all.
It's interesting. One of the things that, again, continuing, at least for me, and maybe it's helpful for others, but trying to put that lens of an ecosystem on. And what does that kind of mean? Because we are living in the ecosystems, whether we recognize it or acknowledge it or we don't. So one of the things that John Raymer, who I've experienced, and some others, who's very connected into a lot of very interesting and wonderful transformative movements, is he talked about the power of understanding what conversation are you in. And that indeed, and he pointed to 3 different kinds of conversations, and to have clarity around the conversation that you're in. And so are we in conversations around possibilities? I think that's a lot of what this conversation is really about. Or are we in a conversation for action, where now it's time for requests and offers and things like this to go in? Or is it just, as he puts it, conversations for rock and roll? We're just wanting to have fun and let it go wherever it needs to go. Again, this all comes back to this ecosystem perspective of recognizing that, without having common clarity with others about what's happening and where are we and where are we wanting to go and what is our purpose together, the more that gets, and I think there's lots of room and great value in having very open, as we do here, very narrowly defined, broadly defined kind of focus. At the same token, over time, I'm drawn to those communities that are expressing in a big way that I align with, of how they want to make an impact, recognizing that we're looking from a 7-generation kind of point of view. And where then can I align my energy and invest of myself and trust, and then turns around and see, and anyway, so all those pieces that feel connected to the gift economy. The conversation has really helped, because I'm also seeing how, I'm wondering about, in terms of myself, where it's like gift has culturally had a specific meaning that was often given without connection to a value received directly, and things like this. Whereas when I'm putting things up digitally, and I'm able to turn around because of the minimum, or the basically zero marginal cost of duplication, I'm able to turn around and say, hey, like Frederick Laloux with Reinventing Organizations does, read my book, download it if you like, read it, and I'll drop you an email in a month to see, did you have value in it, and contribute whatever you feel. So I'm also wondering, in terms of, to spread this, how much language has to do with it, and whether it's really a more value economy is what's being described in that situation. And so, yeah, I'm complete.
Thank you for naming, the different kinds of conversations, different purposes. Do you know Manuel Manga? He talks about that a lot. As a whole, he worked with Fernando Flores and some of those folks who I think kind of codified some of that. But I found myself thinking, I put it in the chat, that we also can be in ecosystems of conversations. And in permaculture, we talk about things, about stacking functions, about things having more than one purpose at a time. And there might be a primary reason why you would do something or design something, but other stuff can be happening too. So I hold a lot of both and there. But I also know the frustration, for example, of thinking you're showing up for a conversation for action and having it be something else, and feeling like I'm wasting my time therefore, or even worse, that I think that's what's going on, and somebody else thinks it's a conversation about possibility or learning, and so neither one of us is getting what we want, but we don't realize the reason we're frustrated is because we have these underlying assumptions about what we're doing. Anyway, I don't know if that's, well, I just wanted to respond to that. The other thing is I put this quote from Peter Block up above in the chat, and he's connecting up. I was reminded of it when you were talking in the beginning, Dunya, about I think about the economist perspective, and we have and then we have Suzanne and Claire, who are artists, and I've come to think of what I do as being a process artist. And in this quote, I'll just read it. He's talking about commitments. He's talking about making a promise, which is a kind of well, as he frames it, it's a gift. Even though he does say those are different conversations. But commitment is a promise made with no expectation of return. It's the willingness to make a promise independent of either approval or reciprocity from other people. This takes barter out of the conversation. Our promise is not contingent on the action of others. The economist is replaced by the artist. As long as our promise is dependent on the actions of others, it's not a commitment, it's a deal, a contract. And he says a bargained future is not an alternative future, it's more of the past brought forward. So I think the assertion is that whole notion that I don't do anything unless there's something in it for me and it's a fair exchange is what got us the world we have. We've gotten really good at running a world that way. And if we want a fundamentally different world, those kinds of processes won't get us to that transformational future, transformed future. That's an opinion, I guess. And then the last thing he says that I love is the declaration of a promise is the form that commitment takes. It's the action that initiates change. It's one thing to set a goal or objective, but something more personal to use the language of promises. And to the extent that a promise is a sacred form of expression, this language anoints the space in the asking. Which I love that sentence, and it's been a little mysterious to me. I've read it many times. But I think there's something about the space of the sacred that's also different. And here's Charles Eisenstein's book on the gift economy, Sacred Economics. So part of what we've lost in this transactional frame is a sense of what is sacred, what is beyond price, right? But it has infinite value, or just transcends that whole set of equations. And I think a true gift economy would embody all of that. And we have a lot of promises being made by people. The Now What collective is a boundary that we have, within Now What, so that we are tapped into lots of ecosystems, but we also do have this group of people that are willing to make commitments and make them publicly. That was Rick's complaint today. His dissent, which is one of the 6 conversations Block names, is essential for a community to have transformational capacities. That we make room for dissent. So Rick's dissent was that the collective isn't meeting enough, and he doesn't feel connected to it. And are we doing as much to support one another as we might? My initial response was, yeah, I hate to hear somebody whine and complain. What did you do to make things different from the way they are? That where's your ownership in this? Which is another conversation Peter Block says we have to have, is about our shared ownership in what we gather for. So I was a little triggered by it, but I completely agree that I've been wanting more collective spaces. You know, the collective's been meeting in cafes, and here we have Suzanne, myself, and Dunya are all members of the collective. The other three of you, you know, Claire also is part of the collective. The other three of you, if you wanted to become members, you could. It's not hard. Anyway, those are some of my reflections on what I'm hearing in the conversation. And I guess in the end, I love that we're talking about this explicitly, and I feel like, you know, there's movement here from this conversation. So I don't know, is this a conversation for learning or for action or for possibility or for just connecting and being in a field of you know, just being together? What's that conversation called? I don't know, but I like it. Vera, yeah.
I just want to say something. For me, it's learning, because I'm, you know, my mind, I have an open mind, you know, and I know the need for, you know, change. And also I have come to a community, for example, I'm just thinking of bringing people in, people that are ready for, and that have so much to offer. And it would be fantastic for this part of the world where, you know, there are so many gifted people, and yet, you know, sometimes they don't have enough money, but they have other things to give. And I think of Paxton, from whom I buy my fresh eggs, and that yesterday I met him and I said, Paxton, do you have eggs for me? He says, they're very small. I said, I don't mind. They're good. So he brought me the eggs. My back door was open. I didn't see him, but he left garlic and a piece of focaccia that he is making focaccia as a new thing. And it's just, you know, that people many times give unconditionally, and it's a way of life out of need. Out of need also, you know, your roof has a problem, so the guy from the corner passes by, sees the roof, and he's going to give you a hand because he knows how to do that. And so this exchange is done instinctively, you know, and out of need. And it's a small town, and many people survive out of favors of others. So that are not really favors, because there's always that exchange. But I would love, if there is another meeting like this, I will spread the word, because I think it would, you know, it's just to plant the seed. And thank you so much, everybody. And I know I have a friend, Isao, who's Japanese, and her son has been doing extraordinary things in Brazil, and he lives in a kind of gift economy. He has many gifts to give, and so I would love them to be part of this. And there is this thing of, you know, if you have learned from the teacher in Japan that you give what it has represented for you, this and it's a wonderful thing. So thank you, everybody. I really appreciate what I've learned.
Merci, Mary. I know how difficult, Suzanne, were you wanting to talk, or did you just move your screen?
I was, but I got distracted and I forgot what I was going to say. So, go ahead.
I was gonna thank my mom, because I know that with all the changes happening, there's a lot of fear, and that she feels a lot of fear around the scarcity that we're all experiencing within the paradigm of capitalism. And to have the courage to even show up for a conversation about possibilities and to be open to learn, to me is a beautiful gift. So thank you, Mama, for coming. And And part, Ben, you were sharing about showing up for a conversation and it's not what you expected. And part of it, I think, is naming it and having the courage to upset and not be so nice and say everything that's coming up, and being vulnerable are all things that are, yeah, what's coming up for me is that everything is a gift in this conversation. Maybe it's a paradigm of abundance, but of also being like, just like Rick gifted when he said, I'm upset, I'm frustrated. Being able to express it is a gift, because so broadening. I really enjoyed, Forrest, that you were like, I have this conception of gift, but then even now with online, the fact that you share it and you don't know who's going to see it. I'm so grateful that you saw my, Forrest, when I saw your message this morning on LinkedIn. I was both terrified, because I was like, oh no, he seems so qualified, and I'm afraid because I don't know what's going to come out of the conversation. And but also, wow, someone saw it and I put it out there, and I don't know what's going to come out of it. It's not like putting it out on a poster in the community, in a town where I know everyone. And I think that that's what Mom is naming when she's like, oh, I want to invite all these other people who live in isolation and who all of a sudden can be tapped into this much broader field of possibilities. And so that's one thing about the virtual aspect that's very exciting, and I'm liking that. I'm seeing that now, because what I was really seeing when I was not engaging in the past week or two, because I was really getting a lot out of being physically with my family, being back here, is the physical aspect, is the intimacy, and feeling like, wow, how am I going to acquire, like, how do you get that online? And I'm finding that it's the vulnerability, and that's those sacred spaces. And that's what I was sharing at the beginning of my blog post, is that I've experienced that. I experience that every time I show up vulnerably in an online space where we're having these conversations. And so yes.
Where did you post in LinkedIn?
Oh, I didn't post in LinkedIn. Forrest added me on LinkedIn and wrote me a little note. Although posting in LinkedIn,
she had posted her LinkedIn in her profile and such, so I clicked on that. Either that or I just looked you up. I do that often as well, because I trust self-organizing universe to allow the unexpected to emerge. And then, as I was thinking again, going back last night, I watched the movie, some of you may have seen, Fantastic Fungi.
Yes.
Really powerful movie. And thinking about fungus as being the highest level of life form that has survived as long as it has survived. And therefore, what do we have to learn from it and how it operates? And again, it comes back to this combination of, is the environment providing the necessary nutrients and resources necessary to live? If it does, it grows and expands and everything. If it runs into an environment where it doesn't, like inadequate water, inadequate food source, then it shrivels and dies up and it grows in another direction. So there's this sensing of what is the environment nourishing for me in the moment, and how much does my, call it ego, how much does my desire and conviction that a particular path is more important than the path that's being offered to me randomly, that's different than the path that I thought. And if the path that I was originally on is not providing me with the nourishment, is it simply a culture that's telling me that I'm supposed to willfully push my way through to get to a predetermined endpoint versus surrendering and saying, where's the magic here that there's more going on? And I have found, since I have shifted personally my own mindset into default to surrender versus default into thinking that I know where I'm supposed to go, my life has blossomed in ways I could have never predicted.
Yay.
As you were speaking the first time, I thought about Fantastic Fungi when you talked about the ecosystem, and it's a film that impressed me a lot. My daughter, of course, introduced me to it, but that's the first thing I thought about. And another thing is about time. You know, the value of time that you spoke about when you started speaking the first time. Given time, and that's a very important aspect for me, and to have time also.
So one little note on that is I love that, Ben, that you call these open calls. And perhaps I want to remind, I guess that's what came up when you were saying about what is this conversation? No, it's not what I expected. For me, it is really important, if this is not the conversation you want to be in, please leave. And leave, and not taking that personally. And if it is the conversation you're in, engage and fully engage. And that's very fungi-like. I love the open space technology for that reason, as I learn more about it, because it's that freedom to go where you're feeling the energy and to grow that intuition of, this feels really good. Why does it feel good? And this doesn't feel good. Why doesn't it feel good? And just going and sensing. And as I learn to do that, I don't take others' decision personally anymore, the same way that I used to. And because I'm trusting that they're doing the same. Perhaps they're not, but I know that I'm doing that for myself, and that I have the power and agency to do that.
Yeah. And the other thing about open space is not only the invitation to use your 2 feet or your mouse or whatever, your wheelchair, to go somewhere if you're not learning or contributing where you are, but also that you get to create the agenda along with everyone else. So if there's something you really want to gather people around, this is, there's an invitation to do that. And yeah, I'll just toss that in. I put the link to the poem. Dunya and I a week ago, we were on we took a field trip to the Possible Futures event that was going on around this time. And it ended with a Brazilian poet, I think she was Brazilian, reading this poem in Portuguese and giving us this English translation also. And I was reminded of it, Forrest, when you were talking about surrender and uncertainty. So I put the link to it in there.
It's a really beautiful poem, and I wish I could find the recording of her reading it.
I know, I want that too. Maybe they must have it.
Her presence.
I'm Brazilian, so she sent it to me immediately.
Yeah.
Dunya sent it to me.
Yeah.
I will ask for the recording, because I find that I would love to share that. It's very embodied, the delivery.
Did you see that Hugo Araujo, I think was his last name, who was one of the speakers, is going to be coming to Now What for an interview on Thursday?
I saw that. Mm-hmm.
I don't know what our timing is. I have a practical gift and an emotional gift to offer. When are we ending?
I think it's 11, isn't it? Like in 40,
No, okay.
40 minutes?
Yes. Oh, that's what we have on the schedule.
Okay. I wasn't sure if we were going an hour and a half or an hour. Well, my practical gift is to share this experience that when I ask, just put it out there to say it's a gift, what I receive is always, almost always, way more than I would have asked. you know, amazingly more sometimes. And so it doesn't, that's part of the flow, you know, part of that natural flow and the natural generosity. That's the thing that is so beautiful. The experience that is so beautiful that I'm having with this is that when I make that space for people to express who they are and be accepted for who they are and what they want to give and whether they want to give and how much they want to give, the connection, the heart connection is incredible. They give me gifts with these just huge smiles on their faces. That's the real gift, you know. But of course, I do have to pay some of my bills. But the real gift is incredible smiles, you know. I know I'm touching them, that we're touching at that point in us that is our common humanality. And I just love that. So, yeah. And then I also have a song, a short song to share when it comes. And do you think that's a good time that came out of my experiences with the gift economy?
Who are you imagining will decide if it's a good time, Suzanne?
Everybody. It's a consensus moment. Well, I know when we used to do NBC calls, when we only had telephones, you know, and we'd say, well, since I'm hearing no objections, I guess I'll go ahead. All right. So yeah, this just arose out of my thinking about the gift economy one day. And I hope that I'm in tune. And I want to get the words. Darn it. Okay, here we go. I have it on 2 different pages. So, all right. This is my gift, I give it freely. I hope my gift will bring us closer. This is my gift, it's who I need to be. I share myself because you mean that much to me. We give our gifts to one another in a world created from a deeper place of understanding for we're sisters and brothers, a world of gentleness and a world of grace. This is my gift, I give it freely. I hope my gift will bring you closer. This is my gift, it's who I need to be. I share myself because you mean that much to me.
Mm. Thank you, Suzanne. Wow.
I have a story,
Mm-hmm.
the now what story that comes with a question maybe too, I don't know. This is a young man in the Gambia, Yaya Jassy, who's been a part of Now What, you can see, for three editions, going back to a year ago. He has very poor internet, and he has trouble navigating the calendar, it seems, as well. So he tends to show up late, or even at times that there isn't a call. He uses WhatsApp and communicates with me a lot, and I've spent a lot of time trying to get him oriented repeatedly, and it hasn't worked much. Rick Feltington, actually, we were talking about before, invited him to become a member of the Now What Collective the last time in March and April, which means that you can ask for money. And one of the main things that's been clear from him is that he needs money. He supports his family. He says he lost his teaching job when they went in lockdown. So he got, and it's been a real question for me whether he's showing up simply to get some money, or if he really wants to give something. So far, I've experienced his presence as extractive. It's been disruptive and troublesome. I like him. We've spoken. We had one session. I don't know, it was Rick and me, and there was one other person. It wasn't you, Claire, was it? We had an actual conversation with him. I think we recorded it, so it might be.
I can't remember.
It's probably in the YouTube playlist for the last edition. We could look for it. So he got in the last financial, accounting for the gift economy, we had something like $2,300 to distribute, and he wound up getting $142. And the way it works, there's no mechanism to say you can't get that money because you didn't fulfill the promises you made, for example. It just doesn't, you make promises, and whatever promises you make are the ones you choose to, and you can say, I'm not going to make any promises, and you can still be a member of the collective, and you can still request money, as he did. And I wrestle with it because, obviously this brings up the question of, if you have this open a system, will people abuse it, and will it be a problem? And I haven't, I'm very much up in the air about Yaya's presence and whether it's been generative. The story I will tell in this moment is, of course, it's been generative. We're having this conversation. He's a perfect, and very gentle test case for this whole challenge and this question. So I'll just leave it at that. I mean, I extended myself in many ways. I've tried to sort of bring him in. What are the gifts you want to do? I tried to make connections with somebody in Senegal in the Global Eco Village Network, and he didn't seem. It's like there's this weird. He gave a gift on a call earlier this week where he came up again. He showed up, very late, and I was asking for music. One of the simple gifts we ask for people to offer is, what's a song or a piece of music you're listening to or that you love that you'd like to put on our collective playlist. And he immediately said, oh yeah, on YouTube, there's my father is a musician, he said, and he gave us the link. I was able to quickly find it in search, and it's on our YouTube playlist now. And so we have his father playing the balafon along with someone playing, I don't know, it's koto or some stringed instrument. The balafon is like a xylophone thing. And they look like they're in a mall, maybe busking. I don't know. It's like a 5-minute clip. It's pretty. But I love that. So that's a thing that we now have from him. It's like the first thing I think he's contributed besides some texts on WhatsApp. But I think there's just something so interesting about that, and of course for me, he represents, coming from a poor country in Africa, just the giant ocean of need and poverty that is out there, and that for those of us who have the privilege of some financial, resources, the enormous gap, I mean, I just went to the farmer's market this morning, the reason I was late, and we probably spent $300 there. He earns $100 a month. The food that I bought is all luxury food by the standards, except that he grows cassava. He showed me some pictures of his little plot. But anyway.
May I ask a question then? In your ideal version of this story, one that just makes you feel happy, that kind of ideal, what would happen next?
Well, the ideal version is that he finds some way to really contribute to, you know, to the Now What community, to offer gifts that others, you know, receive and value, and that in return, you know, that he really finds a you know, a kind of a home that he says he's looking for. You look at the requests and the gifts and requests he named. He says the request he wants to make is, if there's anything beneficial for Now What members or participants, I will kindly like to have a share. Thank you. So he says, tell me what you need. So I'd like to see that happen and have something generative take place as a result. And I've made some efforts so far that haven't seemed to work, which leads me to wonder, you know, is he sincere, or is he just, you know, hoping to get some more money? I think he's sincere, so I can't quite understand what the blockage is.
And what might be the gifts that he would like to be able to share? Has he named those?
Sharing his points of view, lifestyle, educational background, the society I lived, and many more. Thank you.
You know what I'm wondering? I'm suddenly thinking of Helen, your mother, and the fact that she created a space that I feel is really important to her about the elder speaks. And it's something I think she wanted to do before, but perhaps didn't name until this time. And so I guess I'm curious if there's something that he loves to share in terms of a subject or a learning that he has for us, that he could contribute as a special event, so to speak.
I mean, he has really bad internet, so that's part of the problem, you know. And so, and that would be a gift to Now What, is that if he, through working with him, we figure out ways to not rely on Zoom calls, to really bring someone in and engage with them, because that's a problem for many people. He's Mandinka, and the one conversation in depth that we had involved him telling us a lot about Mandinka culture and history. So he has some energy for teaching people about that. Which
is he able to film himself and then somehow
I've tried that. I don't know. You know, I've suggested that, and that would be one option. So far, WhatsApp is the best we've done, you know.
I mean, one question that's coming up from listening to the story is, how do you behave when you suspect that someone doesn't have good intentions?
Yeah. Rick cut him off because he felt like he was being pestered. But yeah, I can have a little bit of a pestering energy, or the experience of engaging with him can be like that. You know, it's like he's very persistent, but at all the wrong times and in ways that just,
no,
you know.
I've been on a call where he's interrupted and noticed the cost of it, because it does completely interrupt the flow and takes up a lot of energy.
Yeah, so what do you do?
What would a fungi do? It's my new question.
Interesting thought as well. You know, unfortunately, our biologist isn't with us to actually know, but I think that's a really valid, fun question that we really don't understand yet much. You know, part of what we're learning is that there is extensive conversations going on between these life forces that are unseen to us, that are chemical conversations essentially, but nonetheless they are conversations showing intelligence that's happening, and they're basically outside of our visibility. And so that leaves me extremely hopeful for the planet that we are going into, which I call radical transparency. It's kind of, like it or not, transparency is going to be extraordinarily and deeply embedded in life. Now, the other side that goes with that is, well, are we going to be able to embed individual agency as deeply as transparency? And I happen to know the answer to that is yes, because I'm working with folks that are starting to deploy methodologies that allow me or the individual to ultimately control what level of privacy do I choose to give away in what situation. And so I'm very, hopeful for what my grandchildren's world will be like, while also recognizing the requirement, not even ability, the requirement of learning how to live in a world where all my habits and all my history and all of that is based around walking on turf, if you will. And all of a sudden that turf has become liquid, and it's more like I have to surf rather than walk. A whole different set of skills that are emerging that I think that are why I'm really enlivened by this conversation and the choice to want to come in and experience a bit more, having just kind of stumbled into now what in the last week and chosen to say, hey, life has got it right now where there's my demands of my commitments and to stay in my integrity leaves openings to choose to do this. And so I celebrate that.
One of the things
You
that I
coming
love
to
about
the fantastic fungi conversation tomorrow for us?
I've actually signed up for it, and the plan, and I watched it with the intention of doing that. I will be driving during that the time of it, so I'm hopeful to at least be able to be on audio.
Where did you sign up?
Where did I? Oh, maybe I didn't officially sign up, and I just put it on my calendar, and because I didn't know whether I was going to watch it or not, and then I watched it yesterday.
Yeah. So you watched it because we're having the watch party, and now you're bringing it to this conversation.
Correct. I mean, I had been suggested that I should watch it, and I just hadn't taken the time. And then when I saw this, I thought, wait a minute, there is much more to this movie if they're actually doing this watch party discussion than whatever my mind was telling me that I already knew about it. And I am so grateful that I did watch it, because it's far more robust in terms of its coverage than what I projected.
Mm.
So I'm real grateful that and again, that's where I love kind of this from personally, this holding this internal cosmology that says, I like things that are grounded and scientifically validated and things of this, while at the same time honoring the mystery of all of the very limited amount that we really understand and know. And so for me, part of that is not clinging, but holding that the scientists are correct that have studied the universe, that says, you know what? We can only measure and see what we calculate is only about 4.7% of all that must exist in order for the universe to be operating in the way that we're witnessing that it's operating. Well, then what the heck is going on in the other 95%? And how much do I think that I can really understand what's happening here without relaxing that there's really something bigger going on, and therefore it lends into my spiritual focus that I can trust. Benevolence is always unfolding. And yet, how do I, in this domain, hold empathy and compassion for those that are experiencing suffering, while simultaneously feeling like there is benevolence is always unfolding? You know, it's kind of, you know, the paradox of this world.
Thank you. Thank you, Forrest. One thing on fantastic fungi, I actually transcribed, I have the transcription of the movie, Ben, so I will share that with you because that might be an interesting way to engage more people. That was a gift to the from Michael Linton, who I shared the movie with first, and he transcribed it because he was very touched by it as well. So one thing about the benevolence is always unfolding. Thank you, Claire. Me too. I put myself on mute because I was like, oh, this one gem. And with that in heart, and with hearing that fungi is always in conversation chemically, and the granularity, and I'm feeling that as being an animal and being embodied, I sense. And I can trust that sense. My mom gave me that. My mom always trusts her gut and what she's sensing, and that's very deep intelligence, emotional intelligence that she has. But at the same time, there's just so much we know, and what we have is conversation, is dialogue, and that we're not very good at it. Actually, I'm realizing, because what would be the cost of asking our friend in Africa, I'm sensing that your intention isn't that you're taking advantage. Like, and that's the thing, is it worthwhile being vulnerable? And that's another decision. But I've come to believe that yes, to just be like and to just also allow for whatever comes out of that. That's one idea that came up.
Well, a little bit of that has happened. I didn't question his sincerity, but I named, I named that he might be coming, part of why he's showing up is for money. And he was very defensive, and I think the sense I get is that he's embarrassed that he needs to ask for money. He wishes he could support himself and his family with his work. He shared his pay stub with me on WhatsApp the other day. Took a picture of it and shared it, look how little I make. But it was late in the conversation. So, I mean, it's this weird sort of, but the message I got was, if I asked him straight up, he would absolutely deny that he's showing up for money. And then I'd still be left with the question, is that sincere or not? And, and maybe there's a compassionate way to say, no, it's not sincere, but that still doesn't mean that it's a problem here. He can still, he's bringing value, just, and there's more that could emerge.
I was going to say that this envy,
go ahead,
put out
Suzanne.
there nonviolent communication. That's what I love about nonviolent communication. It is a model that addresses every question that we're having about communication. It's a very vulnerable, power with model of communication that when we do it really, really with a commitment, with the promise of being that vulnerable, just amazing things happen in terms of people connecting. And it's got all these really wonderful underlying premises, like I have needs too. We all have needs. He has his need, but when we're on a call with him, we have our needs, which might be that everybody, be very conscious of what's going on with everybody else. And we can state those needs. And so it's never about trying to change the other person. It's always just about, yeah, I have needs too, and here they are. And then when we are that willing to put our needs on the table, which is not easy because we've all been taught not to do that. But when we are willing to do that, things transform. People say, oh, I hear your need. I see your humanness. I suddenly realize mine is not the only prevalent need here. It just shifts things. Anyway, that's all I wanted to throw in. So I just highly recommend that.
Well, thank you for Suzanne.
Sorry, go ahead first.
For that. I have found the same in terms of NVC and the power of it. And as you were speaking, what I have never seen, and it could be simply because the comfort level of executing NVC well is not widespread at this point. And but as you were talking, just in my head playing out what that might be like on a group of a dozen or a half a dozen people, where someone like is being described is really taking an inappropriate space relative to doing that, and somebody's feeling that and popping into, with permission, potentially a didactic conversation of an NVC conversation with the others as witnesses, which is then in a certain way hijacking the purpose of the meeting, and yet to be present for a present moment that has emerged within that meeting. And so, like I said, I've never seen this happen, but I could imagine if it was executed well, it could be extraordinarily powerful upon what you're doing. And the risk is that it's not executed well, and that it ends up fractionating and disintegrating the group. And that's another part of life. I mean, life is this constant creation, disintegration, reintegration kind of thing that happens. A story that I think feels like it might relate here is shared with me by a friend, George, is that he was working, he does a lot of work in the ocean, and he's working with some folks that had figured out and captured whale songs and all of this, and had understood that there was a certain amount of whale vocalization that happens when they are actually gathering food, because it's actually a whole group of whales that work together to actually capture a lot of the fish that do this. And so one of the things they did is they were just out and they played this, and a whale did come to them. But then once it arrived and there was no other whales there, it really indicated and started, like anger or frustration or hostility or something. And the point being is that the whale ends up being, wait a minute, that which has always been true to me is failing me. And nature is always in integrity. Mm-hmm. And so therefore now this means maybe I'm about to die, because what I believe is the core of my being, of how I get food, is not true any longer. What does this mean? And all of this. So again, it's just going back to nature as our guide and all of these pieces. In the bigger picture, I'm involved with a lot of people, and this is where this is, it's kind of outside of the edges of the kinds of conversations that I've been participating in. And for me, this is the mycelium component of being willing to get in and expose. But a lot of it is also, I'm very connected. My work is working with regenerative agriculture, and really a background of entrepreneurship, and so very connected with solutions that are deploying rapidly. And a lot of the friends on the team and others are recognizing that there is so much, as was brought up, fear and despair as people look to the future, not understanding that underneath the visibility of what's in, if you look at the main sources of information, you're largely going to miss it unless you really seek it out. That there's all this amazing positive stuff that's happening, just like mycelium, awaiting the right environment that is also enough constituency, enough cohesion, but also nourishment that is going to come. And then my internal belief and feeling is, all of a sudden mainstream is going to look around at some point in time and go, wow, where did all these solutions come from, only to turn around and pick one and dive into it? Wow, this has been developing for 15, 20 years. This one has really got all this depth and strength to it and all this other kind of stuff. And so part of our mission is to make visible these solutions, to spread the hope and to spread the conscious belief, because we know consciousness holds energy and consciousness matters. And fear and love and compassion don't co-inhabit the same space. So.
Yeah.
I've been feeling lately so deeply Gandhi's line is every day more true. Be the change you want to see in the world. It's like, what field do you choose? Do you spread that fear or do you spread that love? And really embodying that and seeing how it's like, I feel like I have a protective bubble. I walk around and I feel that because I choose love. And sometimes it's very hard to maintain that. And so that's where we need each other and the community and the mycelium. Okay, how do I strengthen this? By being in relationship with others who choose love as well.
Yeah.
I just thought about the time that because of I don't work so much, I have time. I'm very flexible about spending my time, what I want to do, and to participating in Now What. It takes time, and I have been telling people, but nobody show up. And when I ask something to meet me somewhere online or something, but people really have their schedule, really a lot. And I don't understand why they have to do so much about it. I'm so confused. Both in Sweden and Japan, I have been trying to meet people online, but they have so much schedule. And it's not so important to, I think it's very rich for me. I have been spending so much rich time this year and not working so much and have so much time to spend for myself. And I feel so, this is abundant. So like you say. So time is money. What's the meaning of that?
It's more, I was also, time is money is one. The other one that I was playing with the other day was money grows on trees. I'm like, oh yeah, money grows on trees. Because it's the nourishment. I really see that spiritual nourishment that we're feeding now, where I feel so nourished. But then the physical, like the stewarding the land and that's money. And so I'm like, I don't really need more than that.
Right, exactly. When I was little, my grandfather told me that you trust your heart. And if you live with your heart, trusting yourself, enough money will come into you. And I just believe in that. So whatever, little money, it's okay. I can live with it. No problem.
We have 4 minutes left, so I want to be mindful about closing. I'm seeing the chat is alive. You suggest that fear and love can't exist in the same space. I'm not sure. Oh yeah, we can choose love while also being afraid. Oh, thank you, Ben. Fearlessness as transcending and not being governed by our fears as opposed to not having them. Mom always tells me, feel the fear and do it anyways. She's a book of little lines like that.
Yeah. Slogans.
Well, I'm feeling very grateful that I got up early and made the choice to be here. I really enjoyed interacting with all of you and hearing you and feeling you, and it's been really nice.
I did too, and I loved your gift, Suzanne. It touched me profoundly. It got me emotional, and I was, I'm so glad I came. Thank you, Dunya, for letting me know. I'm just so happy about this because I want to learn, and I want to be part of the change. And so thank you, every one of you. Thank you.
Me too. Thank you so much. I just thought that if I die tonight, I don't regret that I was here. Something like this.
I love the dramaticness. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dunya, for holding this space and offering this engagement stream, which I think implies this is just the first of a set of offerings and invitations to emerge. I'm looking forward to what comes next, and I'm happy to support that in any way I can. So I think I'm open to requests. I did love your song too, Suzanne, and when Vera mentioned it, I realized I think that I kind of jumped in after you did it and just took us into some other thing without really honoring and acknowledging that special moment. That was really a great point in the call. And Forrest, I'm so glad that you're showing up with such energy and enthusiasm in the Now What spaces, and imbibing and feeding back to us what you're learning and hearing and the sense of possibility that you see. So I'm quite intrigued. I think there'll be, well, someone once said to me mysteriously, someone I had just recently met back in my college days, I think there'll be more commerce between us. And he was an artist, so he meant it. I didn't take it in the traditional. So that's in that spirit of whatever the artist version of that is. Forrest, I'm sensing that as well.
Well, thank you. And I'm deeply appreciative in terms of just the richness of the conversation that we've had and the contributions that everybody has made. So, thank you for orchestrating this, Danaya, and what blessings to have your mother here and is open and receptive to this type of thing. That is, very special.
Yes.
Thank you, Forrest. I feel the specialness and I feel the courage. Thank you, Ben, for inviting I feel your support. I feel it very strongly. And it's been very empowering because I've been very afraid. And Forrest, I shared how I was afraid that you would attend the call because there is that growing confidence, as Visolela in the opening would put it. Let's put it in a positive light. To dare to show up, and I feel more courage and more confidence in doing so, and trust in whatever is to unfold, and that we will move from one type of conversation to the other in due time.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. If there's a number 2, I already have a few people I'm going to invite.
Claire, would you like to share a word? And I don't know who hasn't shared a goodbye, perhaps.
Everybody has.
I have a word. I have exactly a word. Psithurism. Psithurism.
Could you
And
type
it's
that in
the
the chat?
sound. It's the sound of the wind rustling through the leaves of the trees.
Love it. Thank you. Blessings.
Please do write it in the chat.